All right, the QA strategies are back. We're taking a look at these. We developed these in September on some long-term patterns we had, and we were kind of reversed those patterns and had great results, but they're long only, so they struggled. And so you see some of the recent trades. The long side still struggles on crude oil at a massive down move, $16 from its high, $16 per barrel from its high. And so we were taking advantage of how crude tends to be trade better on the long only side, and that inefficiency was definitely mean reverted in October and now even. And so we're taking a look at, what happened on the short side. You could trade the short side of this strategy as well. We talked about this earlier in October, and it's done well, really well since actually July. And so yesterday the short side captured this big move, and today it captured this move, and the long only still loses. But I hate to start trading the short only side by itself now when we've been biased to the long side after this big sell-off. There should at least be some bounce, but you can trade them both. The good news is you can trade them both. I have a portfolio set up to trade both of these. And the drawdown over the past, these are 15-second strategies. So the past year, it's had about a $5,000 worst case drawdown if you trade the long and the short together, and total net profit of around 16K after slippage and commission. And we'll take a look at the historical results in a minute. Here's the NQs, the long only that I had, the NQ, QS1, and QS2. These strategies are in today. You see up over 100 points on QS1 on the NQ. It's hard to sit on that and let that profit run. It always feels like when it gaps up and it's up high, it's going to reverse on you. Here's QS2. It's a little bit quicker. It has a profit target of 45 points and it risks 35 points, while QS1 only risks 15 points. So it's a pretty small stop loss for the current volatility, but it was right today and it captured the move today. So I've been out on the sidelines on these as well because the October, and market's starting to act like a November, December timeframe type market where it slowly melts up again. And the fundamentals had higher interest rates coming, and October felt the brunt of that. And now that the election is over, it's acting as if interest rates are no big deal, and it's going to melt up into the end of the year. Seasonally, the market moves up in the end of the year. And so if you're bullish these markets, the stock index QS1 and 2 is something to take a look at. We'll look at more history here in a second. And then it's hard to know which side is going to work on crude oil. Is it going to continue to drop, or is it going to bounce? So you could trade both, the long and the short. They each have, the long side has a $300 stop loss. The short side has a $500 stop loss. And I'm going to show you the history of those results. So here is the long side, going back as far as we can on 15-second charts in TradeStation, and you see the results. Yeah, so it hasn't done as well since August. It's just kind of trended down slowly. Hasn't done terrible, even though it's a long only strategy. We've taken our small losses on the way down, and here are the results. And then if you look at the short side, here is the short side, huge drawdown, but you can manage it with the long side if you trade them together. And so this isn't great. Crude oil is usually works really well on the long side for day trades, but it's possible that the market could be changing and the long only side may not work as well in a strategy like crude oil. It's a major inefficiency for a market like crude oil to typically work on the long side even in a downtrend on day trades. And now we're seeing a huge move in the QS strategies for it to work on the short side since July. So around end of June, beginning of July, the short side has been up about 13K. You see a nice run here. So when you trade these together, the short side does terrible during this time frame, while the long side does well. And then the long side is doing poorly, but the short side does better than the long side does poorly during this time period. So you could balance it out and trade both sides. If you want, you'll risk about $800 per day if you do that. And so that's something to consider. Now let's look at the QS1 strategy, the long only side. Here is QS1. Here is the long only side for it. This is the closed trade, the current trade. Today is up 2,000, so you'll see a move in the equity curve back up after this trade closes if the market still remains at these levels. And here are the results for the long only side. Let's take a look at the short only side now. And so you see the short only side, nice profits, pretty big drawdown. And so the combination of these, we want to take a look at that as well. So I'll be doing that in my portfolio tool. Huge gain in October. As you might imagine, if you have a good short strategy and you knew going into October that the market was going to sell off, it's possible that you could capture moves like that. So if you anticipate, if you want a strategy that can do well in short periods, you could consider QS1 as one of those strategies because of how well it did in October. How did it do in February? It did this in February, and then it did this a little bit, and then from March until April it did that. And so here are the results again. And now QS2 E-mini Nasdaq, and so here we have that. It's held up pretty well. It's long only. It had this drawdown here in October, but it's bouncing back. It had a nice, like we said, a long trade yesterday, while the long side of QS1 is in today, and you see that long side working about 100 points of profit. And so what else? So yeah, these are the strategies I want to work back into the portfolios. We developed them in September, anticipation of a melt up into the end of the year. October threw us off a little bit. We pulled in the reins on these, and we're looking for a good place to get back in. They'll be in our portfolio tool soon, and we will look at adding them to the portfolios.